Thanks a lot. So I'm going to briefly talk about a chapter I wrote together with Lade Muradova. She's also here from the UPF in Barcelona, and it's about scenario experiments. So we will just start off with quickly explaining what on earth are scenario experiments. So scenario experiments are basically a subcategory of survey experiments. Survey experiments can be broadly viewed as a marriage between two methods. On the one hand, the survey, which usually uses large samples, you can go across country, some big N method. And on the other hand, the experiment, which is traditionally more done in the lab or in the field, but rather uses very small samples. So what's great about scenario experiments? First of all, very obviously, you can really establish causality because it allows you to randomly allocate people into different groups and then provide them with different kind of manipulation materials or stimulus materials, in our case, scenarios. So you actually give them a text to read and then you see what the effects can be. The second great advantage is that you can actually get way better samples than in traditional experimental studies. So rather than just studying the classical weird respondents in the lab, which are often students, higher educated, often from very affluent countries, it actually allows you to study the world and the population as it actually looks like. And third, it can give you power because you can get much bigger samples for way less money. It allows you to use this method even if you don't have a lot of financial resources, but actually still have sufficient power to establish the relationships and the effects that you're looking for. So that's what makes it great. What can you do with scenario experiments in deliberation? We think there are particularly two ways in which you can use it, because I think it's quite obvious that scenario experiments, they cannot actually cover the whole depth and breadth of real deliberative experience. But what you can do with them, you can really zoom in into the sort of micro things that are happening in deliberations, but you can also really zoom out and look at the bigger picture and the wider effects. So one example is a research that Lale is doing a lot in her own work, which is to really study what happens in micro-deliberations. So for instance, she really looks at the role of empathy and what kind of situations do you need, what factors determine whether people actually take on another person's perspectives and put themselves in their shoes. Another kind of research that you can do, and that's more on the zooming out side of things, is to actually study the macro effects of deliberative events. So for instance, you can study whether mini-publics are actually perceived by the wider public as legitimate, as important, as good additions to democracy. And this can easily be done with survey experiments. And you can also study to what extent people can actually take the cues or take the recommendations that are developed in a deliberative forum, and to what extent can this change their minds. But this does not only is not constrained to deliberative mini-publics, can be all sorts of deliberative instances that can be studied this way. So if you're interested, check out our chapter, but also check out these other cool chapters on similar methods in the book. And I also just want to take my last 10 seconds to really thank the editors for putting together this cool volume. Thank you.